We're going to get started in a minute. Just got to come at y'all correct. Make sure my face is clean since I'm going to be so close to the screen. All right, peoples. I just had to go ahead and do this right now because this is something that has been increasing in popularity on news today, apparently, even though this entire subject has already been squashed as something that doesn't apply to violence in people. So I thought I'd go ahead. Let me center this. I thought I'd go ahead and put my 2 cents on this because half of my channel revolves around video games. And most of the games I play have violence in them. So I just need to go ahead and clarify how wrong people are for trying to link violence in video games to the violence that is done out there in the world today. This is not product placement for McDonald's in any way. I'm not sponsored by anybody. All right. So let me just go ahead and just say the obvious here. Video games have no link to the violence that people do in real life. There's no link to it. There's already been research done to show that there's no link to it. But the fact that there are people out here in the world today that still want to use video games as a scapegoat for violence that is done out in the world today just shows you how ill-informed they are. They will get up on the news, say all this stuff about all these violent video games that are out there today, influencing our youth. Yes, because we all know how much violence you feel towards another person when you're playing Spider-Man. We know how much people want to, just hurt other people when they're playing Lego DC supervillains or Lego Marvel superheroes. We know how, and I know they try to center on violent video games. Well, let me just go ahead and pull out some of these violent video games that I have. Let's get the most gratuitous violent video games out of this list. Okay, so we have, let me see. We have Grand Theft Auto. Intense violence, blood and gore, nudity, mature humor, strong language, strong adult content, and use of drugs and alcohol. So, that game has been around for a while now. It's been out on the PS3 for years, and it's been out on PlayStation 4 for a number of years as well. And this reminds me of that recent Anchorman or whatever, in which he states that comic books are stupid and people who read them need to grow up. Oh, you mean Bill Maher, the same dude that tried to speak ill of Stan Lee. A person who's going to be remembered longer than him. So, yeah, of course people would say that. Notice he waited until Stan Lee passed away before he said this. He didn't say this at all. Sure didn't say when he had a cameo in Iron Man 3. Bet that paycheck was nice. So he waited until Stan Lee passed away before he said anything. Yeah. Used it for publicity. That's exactly what he did. And I put a post on his Twitter post he did, and then he says oh, people are coming at me because I said this. It just proves my point. No, it don't. It don't. But that's a conversation for another time. Also, hey, Chase, what's going on? I want to discuss this, really, I do. Because as an avid gamer who games all the time and who is looking, in Kyushu, the news was tragic. For El Paso, Texas, and for Dayton, Ohio to occur within 24 hours with one another is absolutely tragic. It really is. My heart goes out to all the people who are in Texas and all the people who are in Ohio. I don't know if me just saying this will be enough for you, and I don't even know if they'll ever see this, but know that my condolences to every family member who's been affected every coworker, every friend, every loved one who's been affected by this. My heart goes out to you, and I am so sorry that this is something that still occurs in this country. I got multiple articles up that we are going to discuss real quick. But let me go ahead and go down the list of violent video games that I have in my inventory, just to show you how close I am to the edge, apparently. Sorry for interrupting you, but yeah, I'm down to chat about this ignorant comment being made about video games. No, that's the reason why I got this whole stream up, because I want to discuss this. As an avid gamer and a person who plays a lot of violent video games, I just want to see what the link is to playing violent video games and becoming violent in real life, which we all know is something that has been discredited already. Yet somehow or other, video games themselves are still being used as a scapegoat for violence done in the world. Let's go down the list. All right, so we have Grand Theft Auto, literally one of the epitomes of violent video games, and this involved in the fact that this game is rated M. You have to be a certain age to tolerate the things that are in this game. Yeah, we got kids out there who are having their parents buy this. Parents will look at this rating and says, wow, it's got all this stuff in there. I don't think a kid should be playing it. Yet we'll still buy it for their kids. So we'll talk about how parenting goes into this and how it affects kids today. So we have Grand Theft Auto. That falls into the category of very violent video games. We have God of War. It's a lot less violent than God of War 1 through 3, and God of War Ghost of Sparta, and God of War Chains of Olympus. Some of the most violent games out of there. You dismember people in the most brutal of ways and just straight up maim people. And some games depict it as ridiculously grisly. So we got God of War. We have Hitman. You are literally an assassin who goes out and kills people. Sometimes in ingenious ways, sometimes just straight up kills them. Mortal Kombat games. No introduction needed. It is one of the epitome of most grisly games in there. Like, have you seen the X-ray moves that you use in that game? The person should be dead the moment you use that move, yet they're still alive afterwards. And then the fatalities. Oh, the fatalities. Okay, so we got Hitman. You're a hitman, an assassin, paid to kill people in some straight up kill them in broad daylight or kill them ingeniously, like throw them in a wood chipper or have them get electrocuted by a faulty wall socket or whatever, or throw a floating briefcase at them that somehow homes in on their head, which is becoming an actual weapon in the game, by the way. Fun. Let's see. Last of Us Remastered. Realistic in the way of dealing with like a post-apocalyptic world. And the people you kill them in some of the most grisly of ways. And you also get killed in some of the most grisly of ways as well. What do we got? Let's see. Middle-earth, Shadow of War. You literally have orcs who can fight one another. And there's a whole bunch of dismemberment and violence. I'm really just centering on games that have a whole bunch of violence in them. Borderlands. The first Borderlands games was extremely graphic when it came to dismemberment of individuals. When you use acid weapons, you would literally melt the skin off of the person you shot. Or if you use fire weapons, you would literally burn this person to ash. Or if you use electrical weapons, they will get electrocuted on the spot. And then their heads would explode. And all you see is just their exposed skull and the eyes before they just fall over and disintegrate. Very violent game. Let's see. Assassin's Creed. You're an assassin who kills people. Let's see. What else do we got here? We got a whole bunch up here. Skyrim. You basically can just butcher everyone. In any town that you run into, you basically, unless they're like an essential NPC that's protected by the in-game code that makes it so they're invincible, you can basically just kill anybody that you want to. What else do we have? Fallout. Lots of dismemberment in that game. You can literally shoot people's heads clean off. You can see it happen in slow motion. Shoot a person square in the head with a sniper bullet, and if it has enough damage in there, you will literally see the head just explode into chunks. And even then, you can go up to this person, take a shotgun, shoot at their limbs and shoot their limbs off. Dishonored. You play as an assassin. That's grisly and gory as well. What else do we have? I'm going down the list because I'm not playing with this. The Witcher 3, an extremely grisly and gory game. Fantastic game, by the way. Highly recommended. Let's see. Resident Evil. Lots of gore and dismemberment in that game. Deals with zombies and biological weapons and violence towards people and infected individuals. You know, zombies, people who used to be people, and then you just straight up kill them. You don't even think about whether they had families or not. They're zombies now, so it's inconsequential at that point. But it's violent. Red Dead Redemption 2. Think Grand Theft Auto, but set in the West. But Red Dead Redemption 2 improves on that and shows even more gore than before than it did with Grand Theft Auto. What else do we have? Wolfenstein. Extremely violent game where you essentially play as an American soldier that just kills nothing but Nazis. And this can be done in a grisly amount of ways. So basically what I'm saying is I play all of these games. I play all of them. And I enjoy them. Yet not once have I ever had the thought of doing what I see in video games and then doing it in real life. There's a line drawn there. You got to draw a line between what is real and what isn't. Video games, as fun as they may be, they're not real life. They're the opposite of real life. That is why people tend to play more games than be out in the world today. Video games are used as a medium to take a break from real life, like the dreariness of real life that we encounter, the tragedies that we face. This is a way that people are able to cope with the loss of a loved one. This is a way for people to, if they have a temper problem, this is the one way that they curve it. I suggest they don't play Bloodborne or any of the From Software games because it might increase that. But video games as a whole are an entertainment medium. They're not made or created to encourage people to do what's in these games out in real life. You're not going to see me play Assassin's Creed and think that I'm just going to jump off of the top of a building, land on a man, stab him in the neck, and my knees are fine. There's a reason why Deadpool says that it's really hard on the knees when you do a superhero landing. All that weight and you don't feel none of it? I ain't going to jump off no building. Period. I'm going to hurt myself if I try to jump off of Big Ben and fall down into a hay bale down below. Ain't no way you going to jump off of Big Ben in London, land in a hay bale down at the bottom, and then come out completely fine. People act as if video games are mindless fun, and that's what really gets me. They act as if games can't be compelling. The thing is, games can be compelling, but you need to be able to tell. You need to be able to resist the influence that games have on you. Now, I'm not saying that video games are completely clean and that you can't be influenced in some ways. Yes, you can. But at the same time, you cannot use video games as the one scapegoat for the violence that people do out in real life. Like, why is it that my thing is we always hear that video games are getting violent or we need to crack down on video games? Like the current president just said that he's going to crack down on violent video games. How is that going to solve anything? Because what if the people who could do these tragic acts have never played a video game at all? You still going to blame video games on them? Because it's easy to put blame on things that you don't know anything about. So I'm just saying, like, over these writers behind this stuff do breathing life into characters. I can't believe people are completely dismissing this because of violence. Like, people spend most of their lives, game developers spend most of their lives creating characters that can be portrayed in realistic ways. And my thing is, some of these games, they don't. I'm just trying to piece all the things together. My thing is, video games as a whole, you can't just center every tragic thing that happens in United States. Because here's the thing. This apparently only happens in the United States. We have the largest amount of shootings within a country out of any country. Yet, here's the thing. Video games are everywhere. Not just in the United States. They're everywhere else. Japan, Switzerland, Germany, even Africa. Places that you would not expect games to be in. There are games everywhere. Yet it's only in the United States where we have this issue where apparently video games are the problem. They can't be because you don't really hear anything about constant mass shootings in other countries. You may hear of sometimes it may happen in some countries, but not enough where it's like every other month. So let me just go ahead and get down to some of these articles that I pulled up, because when it comes to violent video games, the people who make these video games, does that make them inherently violent because they're creating these? No. They're just trying to make something that people can enjoy, an expression of their talent, and if done right, some people are even praised because of this. Are they seen as the influencers of violence that is done here in the United States? No, they're not. They're sometimes seen as innovators because they know how to do storytelling. They know how to bring characters in different ways. And it's just like there's a double negative here. Like, you can call violent video games as bad as you want, but it really comes down to the mental state of the person. You cannot pin video games solely all on people. And you can't pin what was the word? You can't pin. You can't pin the violence that people do on just one on one specific medium itself. Because one thing you see it all the time, violence from video games, it must have been the influence. Why is it never asked if this person never had like a history of psychological trauma? Why isn't this the first thing that pops up? It's always video games that gets popped up and always used as a scapegoat. But it's never asked, like, what if this person had a history of mental instability? Do we know what this person used to do before they committed this act? Was this a mentally sound person? Did something happen to them that would prompt them to do this? Were they wronged by somebody? Were they wrongfully accused? Were they like matters into a person's personal life that they don't ask, but they rather have something to pin the blame on than try and figure out the solution to the problem. It's better to point blame than to actually figure out a solution to the blame. I don't know, but let's go ahead and get to this. So I pull up a couple articles here, if you will indulge me. This was done February 15th of this year. New study shows that there is no link between violent video games and aggression in teenagers, by Ollie Barter, who's a contributor to this article. In yet another study on the subject, it shows there is no link between playing violent video games and aggression in adolescents. Courtesy of the Oxford Internet Institute and the University of Oxford, this new study was published in Royal Society Open Science and is being touted as being one of the most comprehensive studies on the subject to date. That is because this study used a combination of subjective and objective data to measure teen aggression and violence in games. Compared to previous research on the subject, which relied on self-reported data from teenagers, this study used information from parents and carers to judge the level of aggressive behavior in their children. What's more, the content of the video games was classified using the official PEGI and ESRB rating systems, rather than just the player's perceptions of the amount of violence in the game. If you're curious about the sampling here, as you should be, then it is comprised of British 14 to 15-year-olds and an equal number of parents or carers, totaling 2,008 subjects in all. The result of this thorough approach showed that there was no link between violent video games and teenage aggression, something that led the research that the lead researcher, Professor Andrew, I can't say that name because I will butcher it, went on to clarify. The idea that violent video games drive real-world aggression is a popular one. As we have seen on the news, it is a popular reason, but it hasn't tested very well over time, because this is not the first time that people pinning violence on video games to real-world tragedy, that it has never stood well. It has never lasted long. Like, this is not the first time that this has been brought up. The reason why it's been brought up so many times is because people keep trying to convince other people that people really want games to be the scapegoat, and for everyone to agree and says, oh yes, video games are bad. Oh, we need to do something about video games. We're not going to do anything about what could cause people to be this violent. We're just going to pin the blame on something else. But I digress. Next thing you know, they'll be freaking out about R-rated films. Oh wait, they don't. No, they don't. They don't blame it. It's always video games. Yet, how many violent R-rated films have we seen in recent years? They won't pin it on movies. They won't pin it on TV shows. They won't even pin it on books. But they'll pin it on video games because it's the most accessible. Spider-Man PS4 was better than Spider-Man Homecoming. Baby Driver is more artsy than some of the Assassin's Creed games in my humble opinions. Hey, I can agree with you with that. I love Spider-Man PS4. Both are a form of art that should be respected, yet only one of them is favored. Exactly. You never see a link between violent movies and violence in the world. It's always violent video games. What? People can't be influenced by movies? It's only video games that have that ability? How many Saw movies do we have? No one thinks that you can be that violent as Jigsaw in the Saw films. No one. But they'll link shooting a person on Grand Theft Auto Online to like shooting up people in real life. Because no one thinks to do research. No one thinks outside the box. Okay, both have potentials to be amazing. I love both, but one should not be favored more over the other. Exactly. Yes, of course, Chase. I'm just saying some film books have inspired people to do some things like copycat serial killing or starting cults. Now, here's the thing. They both have the capacity to compel other people, but just favoring one and never associating it with acts of violence out in the world versus another medium, which is used for some people to relax in some ways. I can see that being like leaning in that direction a little bit. But let me get back to the study. As what's his name points out, the idea that violent video games drive real-world aggression is a popular one, but it hasn't tested very well over time. Despite interest in the topic by parents and policymakers, the research has not demonstrated that there is cause for concern. As Przyblinski, I guess I can't say that name, points out, this is not the first study to show these kinds of results, and it's getting to the point now that blaming video games for outbursts of teenage-related aggression holds no weight. Now, this is related to teenage aggression, but at the same time, these are teenagers, and it's not linking them to teenagers. You have adults who have, in some cases, a lot more rational thinking than some teenagers, not all, but just some. And they can think a little bit more rationally, a little bit. Depends on the case. So this really can just be compared with adults as well, because we know what we're doing. We have full knowledge of what we're doing. None of us are crazy. We know exactly what's going on. We are not oblivious. We know exactly what we're doing the moment we do them. So you can't say that this is... Let me just read on. However, he did admit that trash talking online and other such behavior warranted further study. That's because being behind a microphone without people seeing who you are gives you the ability to behave however you want to without recourse. Now, of course, we've seen moments where this has caused people to have certain outbursts and stuff like that. Let me see. That's such a small minority that we can't say it's a big deal that it affects a mass majority. People who are affected clearly have some mental problems and are not like you or me. Exactly. If they're affected by this, then there's something deeper mentally going on. You can't just make video games the basis of it. An act doesn't happen unless the person wants to do it. You can't make people do things. You can influence, but you can't make people do things. Only they can make themselves do things. Yeah, I can't imagine God of War pushing someone to do some violent action. This behavior has to spawn from some dark or abusive background. Exactly. You can't really call video games to be the source of all the problems that are going on, because in all seriousness, something doesn't happen unless somebody actually acts on it. They have to mentally think of themselves doing this action and then carrying it out. There's no outside source that's just constantly telling him to hurt this person, hurt that person. They have to willingly think this in their minds and then act on it. Truly believe a person's choice. Anything can be twisted for evil. I want to kill people. I'm just acknowledging the possibilities about when someone chooses to take it. My thing is, overall, you have to just really be careful with what you do sometimes. Our society just needs to be reminded that art has the power to sway perspectives and speak truth to our world. It is why our generation is so opinionated and passionate about our beliefs. Exactly. Let me see. Not to mention, we all have the counter studies that actually show that playing video games have clear cognitive benefits. So it really is about time that video games were no longer demonized as the cause for all society's woes and accepted for what they are. So this is the one from Forbes. And then we have another one that was posted on July 16th of this year. In February 2018, President Trump stated in response to the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that the levels of violence in video games is really shaping young people's thoughts. He's far from the first to suggest that violent video games make children violent. It certainly looks like they do. Jimmy Kimmel humorously pointed this out when he challenged parents to turn off their children's TV. Surprisingly, many of the children lashed out, some cursing, others striking their parents. Fortnite is another matter entirely. The research. Decades of research seem to support this too. The three most common ways that researchers test level of aggression in the laboratory are with a hot sauce paradigm, the competitive reaction time test, or with word or story completion tasks. In the hot sauce paradigm, researchers instruct participants to prepare that the taste tester must consume all of the hot sauce in the cup and that the taste tester detests spicy food. The more hot sauce the participants put into the cup, the more aggressive the participants are said to be. In the competitive reaction time test, participants compete with a person in the next room. They are told that both people must press a button as fast as possible when they see a light flash. Whoever presses the button first will get to punish the opponent with a blast of white noise. They are allowed to turn up the volume as loud and as long as they want. In reality, there is no participant in the next room. The test is designed to let people win exactly half of the games. The researchers are measuring how far they turned the dial and how long they held it for. In theory, people who punish their opponent more severely are more aggressive. During a word or story completion test, sorry if I'm not seeing your comments right now. I'm on a completely different tab. Actually, you know what? Let me just minimize this so I can bring this out to you guys so I can see what you all are saying. Hold on, let me move it off to the side here. Oh, it doesn't want it. It doesn't want me to move it off to the side. Okay, it's just being finicky now. Okay, I'll just have this tab over my face because I don't need to see my own face. I just need to see you guys as well. Let me see. During a word or story completion task, participants are shown a word with missing letters or a story without an ending. Participants are asked to guess what word can be made from those letters or to predict what will happen next in a story. When participants choose aggressive words, such as assuming that M space ER is murder instead of mother, or assuming that characters will hurt one another, they are considered more aggressive. These tests have been used to examine whether violent games increase aggression. Several representative studies are summarized below. In each study, the participants assigned to play a violent game seemed more prone to acting or thinking aggressively than those who played a non-violent game for an equivalent amount of time. So we have many years where people have played different types of games. Here in 2000, undergraduate psychology students played a video game for 30 minutes and were given the competitive reaction time test. Those who played Wolfenstein 3D, a violent game, turned the punishment dial for a longer period of time than those who played Myst, a non-violent game. In 2002, participants played a video game for 20 minutes and were given a story completion task. Players who played Carmageddon, Duke Nukem, Mortal Kombat, or Future Cop, violent games, were more likely to predict that the characters in an ambiguous story would react to conflict aggressively than those who had played Glider Pro, 3D Pinball, Austin Powers, or Tetra Madness, non-violent games. In 2004, participants played a video game for 20 minutes and were given a word completion task. Players who played Dark Forces, Marathon 2, Speed Demon, Street Fighter, and Wolfenstein 3D, violent games, were more likely to predict that word fragments were part of aggressive words than non-aggressive words than those who had played 3D Ultra Pinball, Glider Pro, IndyCar 2, Jewel Box, and Myst, non-violent games. In 2004, participants played a game for 20 minutes and were given the competitive reaction time test. Those who played Marathon 2, a violent game, turned the noise punishment dial to higher levels than those who played Glider Pro, a non-violent game. In 2014, participants played a game for 30 minutes and were given the hot sauce test. People who played Call of Duty Modern Warfare, a violent game, put more hot sauce in the cup than people who played Little Big Planet 2, a non-violent game. It is easy to conclude from this research that violent games make people more aggressive. In 2015, the American Psychiatric Association, APA, Task Force on Violent Media analyzed 31 similar studies published since 2009 and concluded that violent game use has an effect on aggressive behavior, cognitions, and affect. It does, but at the same time, it is not the only way for people to behave in this manner. Let's see. We have one here from August 5th. So pretty much this article was made yesterday. Republican leaders are again saying video games are the problem after 2 deadly mass shootings over the weekend in Ohio and Texas, which killed more than 30 people thus far. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said that video games that dehumanize individuals are the problem. There is plenty of research debunking video games as a cause, but since McCarthy and other Republicans continue to blame video games, here's a simple chart showing the top video games consuming countries and the number of violent gun deaths in each of them. So in this list, we have violent gun deaths from the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation video game revenue data, which does not include hardware sales from Newzoo, a games analytic company. And in this graph, we have South Korea, China, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and Japan, with South Korea having the most video game revenue per person estimate for the year 2019, with China behind that and the United States coming in third. Then the rest of the countries, the UK all the way down to Japan, they all come downwards. But when it comes to violent gun deaths per 100,000 people in 2017, the United States is the only one that stretches all the way across the board. From the meters, it shows from 0 to 5. The United States is halfway between 4 and 5, where every other country doesn't even push past 1. There is research showing violent video games that can make people more physically aggressive, but this is true of people in all countries, not just in the US. But the story isn't that Republicans are blaming video games, rather it's that they're blaming anything other than lax gun laws and the huge number of firearms in this country. And there's nothing else that pertains to that in this article, so we'll go over to the next one. Video games do not cause violent crime. This is another article that was made yesterday. Kevin McCarthy blamed violent video games for mass shootings over the weekend, and Donald Trump did the same at Monday's press conference, singling out the gruesome video games that are now commonplace to blame for creating a culture that celebrates violence. This is a bit rich. I am not going to read that. It also flies in the face of the basic reality that the United States has a much higher murder rate than any other rich country, even though video games are widely available in Europe and Japan. So homicide in 15 industrialized countries, rate per 100,000 per year of 2012. On average, assaults in the U.S. are 3 times more likely to involve guns than in these countries. And we have France, Sweden, Switzerland, Japan, Poland, Spain, Denmark, Netherlands, UK, Portugal, Australia, Belgium, Canada, Finland, and United States. And it has a meter going from 0 to 6. And all these countries, from France all the way to the Netherlands, they barely go past 1. The UK all the way to Finland barely go past 2, but the United States is the only one that sits at an even 5 point at a pretty high 5.1 when it comes to homicides in industrialized countries. Indeed, America's overall crime rate is only a bit above average, but our homicide rate is sky high because assaults featuring guns are much more likely to turn lethal than assaults committed with knives, bludgeons, or fists. The issue is guns. But since violent video games do strike lots of people, myself included, this is just what the article is saying, as kind of instinctively repugnant, it's natural for people to wonder if video games are contributing to the problem. So it's critical to understand that according to the best research available, a quasi-experimental study by Scott Cunningham, Benjamin Engelstadter, and Michael R. Warden, it's just generally not the case that video games lead to violent crime. If anything, it's the opposite. Time spent playing video games reduces the amount of time that young men can get into mischief. The study, the popular new game releases lead to less crime. The basic study method is fairly simple. Compare the volume of sales of violent video games in a week among the top best-selling video games from 2005 to 2008 and relate it to a marker for violent behaviors. Weekly aggregate violent crimes incidents from the National Incident-Based Reporting System, NIBRS. They use time series modeling and also instrumental variable modeling. In either way you slice it, when a popular violent video game comes out, violent crime goes down, not up. The researchers believe the method is what criminal justice scholars call incapacitation. If you are sitting on your couch playing video games, you are, by definition, not out on the street making trouble. When it comes to ways spent to spend time that mainstream society finds uncontroversially wholesome, this mechanism is widely accepted. It's streets and out of trouble. It happens to be the case that video games are a more stigmatized pastime than playing sports, but the basic mechanism is exactly the same. If you're busy gaming, you're not committing crimes. Gordon Dahl and Stefano Della Vigna used a similar methodology in an earlier paper to study violent motives and found the same thing. Because the audience for violent movies skews towards young men, and younger men are also much more likely to commit violent crimes, when popular violent movies come out, crime goes down, not up. An earlier paper made by Ward also showed that areas where there are more video game stores have less crime and fewer deaths. That said, the paper with Cunningham and Engelstadter does indicate a potential constructive role for regulation to play. Non-violent games are better than violent ones. Ward's original paper simply shows that wide availability of video games in general reduces crime. Similarly, the basic causal mechanism of the newer paper doesn't say anything in particular about the virtue of violent video games. It's just that playing games reduces crime. An earlier strand of lab-based psychology research tends to indicate that violent video games do increase aggression levels. Now, here's the thing. I play a lot of violent video games, and I really get into it. I laugh maniacally when I'm mowing down some of my enemies. Like I did that yesterday. I had a stream where I was playing Tomb Raider, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And I just laughed every time I silently took out an enemy with a knife whenever I was sneaking around with Laura. And when she had a moment in the game where she just literally abandoned all care, and she just went straight Rambo on all the people around her. And it was surprising to see Lara Croft act this way. And you got like this big old machine gun and you're just mowing people down. And I was saying, you're all gonna get it, you're all gonna get it. And I was getting really into it. Yet at the same time, I don't feel any need to do any of what I play in a video game out in real life. Now, here's a little bit about me. When I was very young, I was very impressionable at a young age. And growing up, I was a very, very, very imaginative person as a kid, very imaginative, to the point where sometimes I would believe that I was superheroes and I could do what they did. When I was very young, I was really, really, really into Spider-Man. When the Sam Raimi film came out, I tried to replicate the exact same thing that Spider-Man did. And my sister, she likes to remind me, but one day I was just acting like Spider-Man. And I just started trying to crawl up the wall, and my sister came in on me, and I was still stuck in that spot. And she still doesn't let me live that one down. So at that age, I just thought I had such a big imagination. But as I grew up, I started to, realize that the things that I see on movies and the things that I play in video games are not real. So I should not take them as seriously. So when I got older and I started playing more violent video games, that still stuck with me. What I do in video games is completely different from what I do in real life. I would like to make as much money as some of these characters in video games do, but it doesn't work out that way. And at a young age, I've already accepted that some things aren't real. Like, period. The stuff you see in video games is not real. It's just a bunch of lines and code created to make a virtual reality. And being able to separate the two is paramount to, growing up. Sure, you can have games like Lego games. You can play them all day, but you know for a fact that they aren't real. Then you have games that look super realistic, like the upcoming Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and you should still be able to tell the difference. Like, we haven't entered in the uncanny valley of video game quality quite yet, where we're questioning whether it's real life people or not. Even though gameplay graphics are getting to that point, we're still able to tell that what's a video game and what's real. Therefore, you should be able to tell that what you're doing in a video game shouldn't apply to what you do out in real life. No matter how realistic a game may seem, you should be able to tell the difference between a video game and real life. So the whole notion about, violent video games being the cause of every single shooting that goes on and being used as a scapegoat for everything is kind of one-sided and a bit narrow-minded, especially from people who call themselves being in Congress and being in the Senate. You would think that these people would do the research first before they say these things on live television, and then, get ridiculed on Twitter as they are right now. And even one individual said that the reason why there's no violent shootings in Japan is because Japan doesn't have video games. Who made this then? I don't know if it looks backwards to you guys, but this is Final Fantasy 15. Who made Fist of the North Star? America didn't make that. Who made Metal Gear Solid? They may have taken his name off, but it wasn't an American man who made this and made the entire Metal Gear Solid world. What else do we got? Who made this? Sword Art Online, Fatal Bullet. Americans didn't make this. Who made Resident Evil? America didn't make this. Who made this? America didn't make One Piece. So all I'm saying is just do your research before you go mouthing off on television. Video games don't kill people. People do. It's the motive behind what people do that people should be questioning. It's very easy to put blames on things that you don't know anything about. And I'm not saying that any of you here who are watching me now, that you don't know anything about what's going on. There's tons of people who are a lot more knowledgeable on me on any of this. I am just a bystander in this. As one who plays video games all the time, and many of them violent, I can only give my 2 cents. I can't say that I'm as articulate as some people when it comes to discussing this matter. I'm not young, yeah. I don't have a way with words like he does, or Jim Sterling, or anybody else who does this for a living and are professionals at it. I can only give it as a person who has seen this happen and has seen this brought up so many times that I just want to give my own 2 cents on it. Video games do not kill people. People do. It's the motives behind why these people do it that should be cause for concern, rather than pinning the blame on other people. Now, of course, I don't know how this stream will do. Some people may not like what I say, but I can only speak the truth as one who prefers to be neutral on all things. I'm not going to say like, oh, video games are the problem. It depends on the person. And not everyone is violent, especially when they play violent video games. I'm not violent, and my dad is not violent. And we both play games where we shoot up people and hurt people in horrific ways. And neither one of us would ever dare hurt another person. Period. I was not raised to be this way. And no matter what type of games I play, it has never come across my mind to inflict harm on other people. I'm just not that kind of person. So the whole notion that violent video games is what causes this is like, there are multiple things that can cause this. So you can't just center it on one specific thing. It's very easy to pin the blame on something that can't really fight back. Video games are not going to pipe up and says, we are not the cause of this. No, it's very easy to pin blame on something that can't retort the blame. Like, people could make like animations that say like video games are not violent, but that's just extra. Video games are not going to stand up and say we're not violent in any way, we're not the cause of this. So it's very easy to pin blame where the other one cannot, represent themselves. And plus, here's the thing. There are many games out there that are for kids that are still violent. Like the Lego games. They are violent as well. You ever seen how many times people get thrown off of buildings and you just see their body parts just explode? Or you can hit people enough times in these video games where they fall to pieces. I know my sister loved to push me off a cliff whenever we played Lego Star Wars. And every time I played as R2-D2 and she played as someone who could use the Force, she liked pushing me off cliffs a whole bunch of times. And just to hear R2-D2 scream every time she fell off. Yet she's not violent. So I don't get it. That's just my 2 cents on it. I mean, I can only say so much, but it's just sad that this is. And the thing is that this only happens in the United States. It doesn't happen in other countries that really have a lot of video games. And especially countries that have more video game sales than this country does. Yet we're the only country where mass shootings and people inflicting harm on other people is more prevalent in this one singular country than any other place in the world. So it has to do something with more than just video games. But I guess people just like to pin the blame all the time. But that's it for me. That's all I wanted to say. This was a good talk. So hopefully this meant something to somebody, and hopefully this opened up some people's eyes. And, I'm glad we was able to have this discussion. So, I don't know. But hopefully hopefully the world begins to see that video games are a lot more than just their violent tendencies. There's many beautiful games out there, like Horizon Zero Dawn. It is an extremely beautiful game. So there's just so many good things about games that it's always being overshadowed by all the bad things. Just wish people could see it. All right, that's it for me. So hope y'all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in the next videos. Have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.